friend.
My great-grandfather was at Pearl Harbor, and a lot of my family has given up, has gone and fought in wars, and I really haven't done a damn thing as far as laying myself on the line like that, and so I have a great deal of respect for those that have and what the flag stands for.
I always used to look up when we were in the huddle and, saying the Lord's Prayer. I'd always look up and look at him in our games in Arizona. So I look up and he's not there, but I can see him.
Nearly every day for the past 4 years, in his heart and in his head, Jake Plummer has seen a vision of his friend, Pat Tillman.
I mean, I had visions of seeing Pat with Osama in a headlock in some cave. I mean, that was Pat. He could do anything. I was thinking, God, he's going to come back a war hero and see him on CNN with Osama in a headlock wrestling around with him or something.
Tillman didn't come home with bin Laden. Instead, like the nearly 3,000 other American servicemen and women killed in the War on Terror, he came home in a flag-draped coffin. For America's most famous soldier, bugles and bagpipes played from coast to coast. His memorial service was a nationally televised political extravaganza. Senator John McCain, among others, delivered eulogies.
I will remember that his family and his country lost a good man. And I will celebrate the brief, brave, and happy life of Pat Tillman.
The public was told Tillman died a warrior's death, charging up a hill, urging on his fellow Rangers in a fight with Taliban soldiers and Al-Qaeda.
He made the call. He dismounted his troops, taking the fight to the enemy uphill to seize the tactical high ground from the enemy. He directly saved their lives with that move. Pat sacrificed himself so his brothers could live.
The memorial went off, and it was amazing, and everybody was there.
When we talk about him as a friend, there's so much more than people will ever know, because he was so unique in so many ways.
The narrative seemed perfect. War hero and football star dies fighting terror. We now know, of course, that it was all a charade. Pat Tillman was killed by friendly fire, and the Army knew it.
And I just think, God, they knew it was friendly fire then, It makes you sick.
When you first found out that they had hid these so-called irregularities, were you outraged?
It just made you feel kind of sick that they'd cover up something like that for whatever reason. We were all led to believe that he died and, leading his troops up the hill, and then they come tell us that it wasn't. It was friendly fire. What can you do? You're at their mercy, and then you just feel for the family.
For the past 2.5 years, Pat Tillman's family has been at the mercy of a government seemingly either unable or unwilling to tell them the full truth about the circumstances surrounding Pat's death. Time after time, their demands for answers have been met with inconsistent explanations and secrecy.
The investigation results indicate that Corporal Tillman probably died as a result of friendly fire while his unit was engaged in combat with enemy forces.
It is hoped that a 5th official investigation currently being conducted will clear up the messy facts. Like many of those who knew and loved Pat Tillman, Jake Plummer has plenty of questions and isn't sure if he can ever trust the answers.
What questions do you have for the government about the way Pat died?
I think we know how he died. It's just, who was calling the shots and why? And why would you lie? It gets back to what Pat was about, what he stood for. Give us a little bit of that integrity. Let's give that back to his family, because that's what he was about.
Convinced that there was an extensive and significant cover-up by the military surrounding Pat's death, the Tillman family, particularly Pat's parents, Patrick Sr. and Mary, spent much of the last 2 years quietly pushing for a criminal probe into the matter, without fanfare.
Pat's mother and father have pretty much stayed out of the spotlight. From your contact with the family, how is the family doing?
They're not doing great. I mean, they lost their son, one of their sons, who was an amazing person, but, they're fighting to find some answers and to make what happened to him right. people say, you know, you got to move on, you got to move on, and they're just, move on from what? You know, how can you tell me I got to move on? I mean, this is blood. This is my brother. This is my husband, my son.
What's your sense about how they feel about the misinformation that has been put out about Pat's death?
Oh, they're upset, big time. You know, I've had contact with his mother back in Arizona, and she's an amazing woman. Every time she tries to do something, she's thinking about her son being killed and, you know, used as propaganda, and it's got to be tough.
And it's for them that he demands accountability. Plummer doesn't try and pass himself off as an expert on war and its ambiguities. He's just a football player and an American, one of thousands who have lost someone they loved in these recent conflicts. But he understands that his public persona gives him a platform. So while the Tillmans work quietly behind the scenes, Plummer, with their blessing, is speaking out.
They weren't honest to the American people, and they lied about a person that never lied. I believe that had he pulled the trigger and shot one of his own, that wherever that kid lived, he'd have been on that doorstep talking to their family and apologizing and asking for their forgiveness, because that's just what Pat was about.
Even after 2.5 years, you still get very emotional about it, don't you?
Oh, definitely. And I can say and talk about things maybe that his family doesn't want to talk about or can't talk about. You know, I've kind of been the guy to speak for them in a way. And, you know, out of respect and out of love and out of admiration for Pat, that's what I will continue to do when the time comes.
Jake Plummer speaks with considerable clarity and passion, but Peter, the question arises, there are friendly fire deaths in every war, part of the so-called fog of war, or in some cases it's just incompetence. But why would the government attempt to cover up an incident like this, since given Pat Tillman's prominence, given the fact that other people were there, the facts are what they are, there's almost no way that cover-up could have held?
Bob, you have just underscored with that lead-in why Pat Tillman's friends and why Jake Plummer and the family, why they're so outraged. They don't know who to believe. They've heard several different explanations. They know that there's a cover-up. And sitting across from Jake Plummer, you could just feel the outrage. You could feel the passion, because one of his best friends in the world died, and he still has not been told a straight answer why.
There is another investigation ongoing. We're told it will soon reach its conclusion, and the results will be made public. The Tillman family hopes that this will be a credible report that not only will provide some closure, however inadequate, regarding his death, but will take the focus off the circumstances of his death and put it back on his life and what he died for.
What people should know about Pat Tillman, Bob, a Renaissance man who's a better person than he was a football player.
Peter, thanks very much. Okay, we move forward now and back to the field and to Tennessee. The Jets were in town, and for Titans center Kevin Mawai, the season opener against his old team held a bit of extra added meaning.